Well, it's slow. Welcome to Women Talk Construction. I'm Christi Powell, and I'm here today with my co-host, Angela Gardner. And today we are exploring a side of the industry that is just as vital to us as our physical safety, and it's our digital defense.
Mm-hmm.
We're joined by Nick Espinosa, the Chief Security Fanatic. Nick, your work in actual war zones like Ukraine really puts the warfare and cyber warfare into perspective. We're grateful to have your expertise on this show today to help us protect what we built. But I'm just going to throw this out there. Angela and I are not going to have much to add to this conversation. We're just going to learn a lot.
Yes.
And we listened to you last week. We were super excited about being able to have you on the show so that you could, just educate all the people that are listening to our podcast every week. So thank you so much for being on. We're really excited about what you're going to do for our industry over however many years. You've got so much experience and you've got so much good wisdom to share with business owners, with construction companies, with workers, with our high school daughters, teenage daughters, like all the things that you know about security and cyber warfare is really going to change the world. So we appreciate you for being on today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And, we had a great time at that conference the other week, and looking forward to this. So happy to answer anything.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't even think there's enough time to explore all the cool things that you talked about, but we're going to kick this off with cyber warfare and construction. So, Nick, insights from working in a global war zone and how those high-level threats trickle down to everyday business. Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what's actually really interesting is that a lot of people just consider war as what we've always thought of war, right? World War II, tanks on the ground, planes, bombs shooting at each other. But one of the things that modern warfare really, really has evolved into, aside from asymmetrical warfare, is the fact that cyber attacks and cyber warfare is an integral part to this. We just don't consider this. But the United States has been basically in a state of warfare on the cyber warfare front for probably 2 decades at this point, with Russia, China, you name it, where they're breaking into our infrastructure, looking around, we're hacking into them, and on and on. But the lessons of Ukraine, actually, as one of the most modern wars, has really been interesting in the sense that we saw in the weeks leading up to the actual kinetic invasion by the Russians into Ukrainian territory, was that they were launching cyber attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure. And it wasn't just, to knock out television or all of that. They were going after banking institutions, telecommunications as well. They had done a dry run in 2015 of knocking out a nuclear power plant and then hitting the phone system as well to basically make 250,000 Ukrainians deaf and blind. And so what was really interesting about all of that is they were attempting to destabilize the infrastructure of society through the technology. So imagine here in the United States, if Chase Bank and US Bank and PNC and all the big banks, suddenly all their ATMs stopped working. You couldn't go withdraw money. There would be absolute panic. And that's what the Russians essentially were trying to do to the Ukrainians. The other interesting thing is that when they actually invaded kinetically, boots on the ground, one of the things that we were noticing was that they were not actually intentionally trying to blow up the internet. And the speculation was the Russians needed to use the internet as well for communications, and they started routing Ukrainian internet through Russia so that they could monitor the citizens as well. So there's a lot that goes on there, not to mention evolving of different types of cyber threats and malware that can infect devices, computers, all of this. They were basically developing something called the Mirai virus that was infecting IoT devices around the world. So think about like your fridge at your house or the cheap router you use that like Comcast or whoever gives you, infecting those to then weaponize them against, targets and population. And they were evolving that through Ukraine. So it was incredibly interesting time. And quite frankly, we're still learning from it today. And as we are expanding into other war zones, unfortunately, we're starting to see that asymmetrical warfare through cyber really, really come to fruition.
So everybody's affected by these things, right? From a high level all the way down to everyday businesses. Most construction companies are smaller, right? They're small to mid-sized firms. So they're often targets. And how can they shift from being a victim to being defended?
So I like to say that, we hackers are lazy. Like construction, you guys wake up at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, you're on a job site. I would wake up at the crack of noon if I could every single day, but I really don't get that chance just given my day job and all of that. So by virtue of that, I like to tell this to businesses, especially small business, if I'm on stage. If anybody walks in saying they can make you hack proof or foolproof, they're absolutely lying to you. I would never say that because it's quite frankly impossible. But what I can do is make you a big enough pain in the butt to break into that the lazy hackers of the world are just going to move on. When they've got 20 different targets and you're the absolute pain, they're just going to have 19 targets. And so understanding that risk footprint, understanding what the threats are out there, I think is beyond important. And a lot of, to your point, construction companies don't realize that construction is always in the top 3 verticals targeted by cyber attacks. And the reason being is essentially the understanding is there's going to be a lot of cash on hand. You're going to be on deadlines from the GC. And so the small construction company will turn around payment as fast as humanly possible to get back on track to the job site and all of that. Because we're talking about work stoppages, outages, which may mean, you have penalties to the GC, or, if you're a union shop, you might have wage issues with the local labor. So a lot of this goes into the calculation that they are looking at and understanding essentially, especially if they're able to get in, they're going to be looking for your finances to see what you got in the bank. So they know that they can basically give you a ransom that's a tough pill to swallow, but you'll swallow it. So, it's a big issue. And like I said, construction is very heavily targeted. So I would basically take that into account when you're looking at developing a good cyber defense strategy that's based on your risk, understanding your footprint for risk, and then figuring out how to handle it.
So didn't you say construction was number 2 in the attack categories?
Yeah. So it flips. This is outside of government. So depending on the year over year, who's paying out more and all of that. But outside of the government, it's healthcare, finance, and construction are the top 3. Healthcare pays as fast as humanly possible because if you ransom a hospital, people are going to die. So they pay as fast as humanly can. Finance is just where the money is. And, what are you going to do if you're going to rob a bank? You rob a bank because that's where the money is, right? But construction is that interesting vertical where you've got a ton of small to mid-size organizations that, quite frankly, know construction very well, but they don't know my job very well, right? Or they're outsourcing to third-party providers that are kind of mid-range at best. And there's a lot of IT providers out there that try to offer like cybersecurity or data security solutions, but they're doing it kind of mid-range. They're more complacent. They're not keeping up with the latest and greatest technologies. We've had massive shots across the bows and Rubicons in the last couple of years in cybersecurity, primarily thanks to AI, but also just due to advanced development of cyber warfare tactics by adversarial nations. So it's been a big issue.
Wow.
A quick question. So have you seen
just in
this?
shock.
I know. I want to bring up the thing, Christi, I think you've heard me talk about this. At my last job, I worked for an industrial electrician, and they were actually they were brought in to fix a ransom hyper, that had happened. And it was like $1 million on 2. I think they held data, data that was very important to them. And they wouldn't release it. They had control over both of these datas, that stored all their data. So they were brought in to kind of fix that, and one of them actually could get fixed. So actually, our industry can go in and try and help with some of this if you're in the electrical sector. But when I heard that, I mean, those numbers are like, who can pay $1 million? And they're going to have to, I guess, go to their insurance company and
Well, and one of the big problems that we see, especially in small organizations, like a smaller construction company, is that all the documents and data that are sensitive to the organization are in one place. So if I'm an attacker and I'm breaking in, I can find your insurance policy and I'll know exactly what your insurance carrier will pay. So that's what I'm going to ask for.
That's what they do?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I've been in negotiations because all of these are negotiable. And when we're in negotiations, if they say, we want $1 million for ransom, whatever it is, I'll say, well, we're a small business. Like we can't afford $1 million. They will send me a copy of the actual insurance policy for the construction company and say, yes, you can. Here's what they'll pay. We know the limits because we have the data on you. We know your finances. and all of that. And it's a really tough position to start negotiating from. And for the record, all ransoms are negotiable. The other side of it, though, is a lot of orgs look at cyber insurance as kind of a cyber defense strategy, when quite frankly, it's not. It's a Hail Mary. And I'll give you an example of this. We had an AEC firm, about, I want to say it was like 500-600 users, get hit, completely locked out. Everybody's getting a free vacation, for the record, because you still got to pay salaries, you still got to pay mortgages and electricity and everything else. But the attackers wanted $5 million. We were able to talk them down to about $1.2 million. Insurance paid about $800,000, minus the deductible and all that kind of stuff. And then the AEC firm went about essentially improving themselves, right? And getting the defenses they need, getting the training they needed. And next year, which was about 6 to 8 months later, when they went to renewal, the insurance company said, well, to renew, it's going to be $1 million. And they said, what are you talking about? Like, we did everything now that you wanted us to do. And the insurance company, their platform or their stance was basically, well, we want our money back and you can't go anywhere else because everybody knows you've had a breach.
Gosh.
Right. So it's been understand like the limitations of cyber insurance, but also understand the importance of protecting and isolating that kind of information, because it's going to get you into trouble when it's supposed to be your lifeline. So
what do you do when that happens?
What
can't, like, if you can't go get additional insurance, do you have to stay with that same carrier?
Well, they paid $1 million for insurance that year. And then it went back to normal the year after that, and on and on.
Okay.
But the point is that the insurance companies, and for the record, I've worked with large insurance carriers over the years, and in fact, I'm spinning up 2 more consulting gigs with them, with 2 others, is that they are getting killed because the only thing they know how to do is send a questionnaire out, that you're going to fill out. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I've got it. They don't even pay attention to these things. And then they don't realize they're not going to get covered when the insurance carrier comes in and says, well, wait a second, on paper, you said you have X. We're not finding X anywhere here. That would have prevented this issue. And so they're paying out, the reinsurers that cover the insurance companies are paying out. And so all they're doing is just upping the requirements, upping the bill. And so that's one of the things we're working on right now, is figuring out a better way to more accurately quantify any kind of organization for their risk, so the insurance carriers really understand better how to indemnify them.
Wow. I'm going to take a hard left after that, because
Sure.
I can't even go anywhere with that. That's just mind blowing to me. And actually, I'm starting to think, what should I be doing at home? What should I be doing at work?
Everywhere, right? I know, yeah.
So one of the things that we talked about before we started the podcast today is your love for social media. So,
Sure.
And honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with it, but mostly it's hate. So, I think it's a distraction. I don't think it's good for my kids. I don't think it's good for me. And your insight and perspective was very eye-opening to me. Can you share with our audience just a little bit about some of the things that you're doing that are making a big impact on the way people see social media?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking to the guy that has done 2 videos entitled "It's Time to Put Mark Zuckerberg in Jail." The last one being an hour long of just the absolute litany of sins that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, aka Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, have basically wrought against the world. We are talking about aiding and abetting a genocide in Myanmar. We're talking about war crimes across the Middle East being conducted on Facebook because they cannot get Arabic translators or Farsi translators. So selling antiquities and all of those kinds of things in war zones is illegal by the Geneva Convention. They're not handling it at all. Not to mention the absolute damage that the younger generations have had on the Facebooks and Instagrams of the world, and others as well. But they're a huge driver of this, where we have seen huge problems with image, mental health, especially in teen girls and teen boys as well. But when you look at some of the studies that have been done by Jean Twenge of that wrote iGen, or Jonathan Haidt of he wrote The Coddling of the American Mind with a co-author I can never remember. But if you look at the actual trend lines, you can see a rise in both depression and suicidality. Basically, the year 2011, 2012, when Facebook absolutely exploded and became essentially the norm and the standard. And so that has been a huge issue. Aside from the fact that when we grew up, the bullies stayed in the schoolyard, the bullies come home with you now. There's a lot of different problems that we have had. And on top of all of this, they've been data mining absolutely everything. And we know, thanks to whistleblowers like Frances Haugen, Sarah Wynne Williams, and some others, that one, they've known the entire time that they've been causing this damage. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg had commissioned internal psychologists to look at the problems of Instagram specifically, as well as Facebook. And before they were able to release their final report, which was in draft, he had the whole thing killed because the report was beyond damaging to to Facebook. We also know that they've prioritized anger and rage over everything else. That's what the algorithms push out because it drives engagement, which drives revenue for them. And so the disinformation warfare that we've absolutely seen, just leveraged by foreign governments, by people that are just simply spreading it as misinformation, believing it's real, has been absolutely devastating to basically society in general. I have a YouTube channel. I've done thousands of videos on privacy, on all of these different kinds of things, not to mention security and everything else. And it's been a very, very longitudinal issue that we are seeing. And aside from the fact we're losing socialization skills. Like I remember, and I talk about this on stage, when I was 16 years old and I was very interested in a young lass, I had to get through her father.
Now you have to get through anything.
Right. Now I swipe left, I swipe right. And having to actually have those social skills to be able to interact with, 6-year-old Nick being able to interact to try to get a girlfriend and then have to get through her father, or even just have friends in general. We're losing a lot of those skills. And if you're looking at longitudinally where we're going with this, we have another parallel issue that we are seeing with the youth. So as we ramp up artificial intelligence and also robotics and automation, this becomes a problem for the workforce, and especially in construction as well. So think about it this way. If you have a 16-year-old and they can't even get a Mick job because the AI is taking your Big Mac order, the robot's making it and handing it to you, then where's the job for them? And it's not about the crappy paycheck that they would get, because Lord knows McDonald's or whatever doesn't pay well. It's about the socialization that they would have, right? You have to deal with jerk employees or, coworkers that you like or hate, a jerk boss, a drunk guy at 2 a.m. that just wants a Big Mac. If we don't have those skills as they grow and mature, then how do they enter the workforce as well-adjusted adults that are able to interact, whether it's a job site, in an office, hospital, wherever they're going to work? It's a big problem, and a lot of it stems from essentially what Zuckerberg created, which is the behemoth of the data mining, disinformation, mental health disaster of a machine. It's a big problem.
Yeah, it is a big problem. Way bigger than I thought it was, and I'll be watching every one of your videos now.
Well, thank you. I hope you have like 5 years.
Oh, it's that
I've been doing
much.
it for quite some time.
Now I just have to make sure my teenager's watching it too.
Yeah. It's a big one. It's a big issue that we have right now. And right now we don't have good fixes for it.
Right.
Privacy, the mental health, whatever it is, we're band-aiding, but we're not actually fixing. And and when, for the record, when you have governments that can't get together and vote on what to have for lunch, let alone meaningful legislation on this, it makes it a heck of a lot harder.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing just your perspective and your wisdom with the country. Like, obviously, you've got so many videos out there. You really care about what you're doing, and we appreciate that. I really appreciate that. You don't see a lot of that with people that have the kind of wisdom that you do, that are willing to get on a podcast and keep talking about it without being paid, right? So we appreciate that. You're just making the world a better place.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my goal for retirement isn't, honestly, it's not a monetary thing. It's have I been able to defend 2 billion people on the planet? Nice. That's my goal right now. And right now I'm coming up to around 1 billion with that. And I've been moving the goalposts throughout my career, and the money will come, but I just want to leave the world a little better place than I left it. And I think that's everybody should
definitely are. Yes.
So, thank you.
That's a great impact.
It
A
is.
way to make an impact. I love it. Well, our last question is, Nick, how do you see emerging cybersecurity trends fundamentally changing the way we manage business and consumer data? How does that look to you?
Yeah, so we just had a massive shot across the bow in cybersecurity within the last month or so with something called Mythos. If you're not familiar with this, this is a artificial intelligence that Anthropic has developed that they consider so advanced that they are not going to release it to the public. And to that point, this has found, and it wasn't initially designed for this, but it's so good that it was finding vulnerabilities in 30-year-old software that nobody else, no other AI had found, which means if it can find these really deep vulnerabilities, it can exploit these vulnerabilities. And so we know that Mythos is basically the first real shot across the bow, but others will be developing this as well. And so that is essentially the concern that we're going to see right here, is that corporations and organizations move very slowly, right? You've got red tape, even if you're a small business, you've got to keep up with updating to find these vulnerabilities and all of that. But if the artificial intelligence is immediately finding it and then developing a tool to exploit it, it's moving faster than humans and corporations can react. So that is actually something that we are really going to have to start working on in cybersecurity, which is developing the same level of AI that's looking for the vulnerabilities, but writing a fix for it and immediately patching it to try to keep up with the offensive side. And right now, offense is absolutely winning over defense because of these advancements. But the future of the front ends of cyber warfare, the trenches of cybersecurity and defense, is AI fighting AI. And if we're not adopting that right now, it's going to be a big issue. And a lot of small businesses do not have the resources. And I'm not talking about monetary resources. I'm talking about the actual cybersecurity help that is keeping up with these kinds of things. And so that level of complacency just means they're that much farther behind. The tech debt just gets worse. So it's a big problem, but I have hope in the future that we're going to really start seeing better defensive tools built off of offensive tools, because it's going to be the same capability. We're just going to be patching as fast as we humanly can. So we'll see what happens, but that's where this is heading thus far.
Wow, I feel smarter already.
I think we need to have him on for an AI show eventually.
Yeah,
Near
100%. And it needs to be in a whole hour for sure.
Yeah.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
But Nick, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much, because you shared so much information that's just, I know that our audience is going to very much appreciate it. Share with them how they can get in touch with you if they want to know more about you, and how maybe to have your company help them.
Sure. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn at /Nick Espinosa. My YouTube channel, trying to get to 250,000 subscribers. We're getting close. So feel free to subscribe there. Also /Nick Espinosa. You'll see my mugshot all over it. And if you want to know more about the company, you can go to Security Fanatics. That's plural, securityfanatics.com. And come say hi. Love to hang out.
Yay. Thank you, Nick, for making such a complex and honestly intimidating topic to both Christi and I so easy to understand. It's clear that whether we're talking about a job site in the Carolinas or a project overseas, that principles of security remain the same. To our listeners, please do not wait for you to have one of these serious attacks happen. You can't. You need to think about it now. So thanks for joining us, and we hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.